the Friday Cocktail, presented by Anna Glowinsky.
I am delighted to be joined on the line by someone who is an emotions expert, somebody also with an alter ego. Very nice to have you here, Mr. John Rushton. How are you doing?
Anna, I'm fine. Thank you very much. And yourself?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. You also have an alter ego of Aunty Bronwyn.
Yes.
They're two quite very different personas. Could you tell us a little bit about who Aunty Bronwyn is, please?
Well, just going back to the first aspect, when I was writing my own books under my own name, and then I wanted to say more to more people. And the only way I could do that was to have something like Aunty Bronwyn. And because she's a fictitious character, you can say what you want. And there are people out there who, when you talk, who want to get offended and upset and everything today anyway. But with Aunty Bronwyn, they don't. They take it as it is.
Okay, that's an interesting take on it. And I mean, what does Aunty Bronwyn do? What does she talk about? What is her role? What's she there for?
Well, basically speaking, she's an agony aunt. Mm-hmm. A lady who had a rough life, but actually made the grade, whatever that is, but made the grade. And she's come back to retire now, and she wishes to offload her knowledge and wisdom. She likes her gin and tonics in the early evening, and she settles for no messing around with anyone. And therefore, when people ask her, she'll give them a blunt response. Not rude, but a blunt response.
She's become very, very real then, hasn't she? And over time, what sort of interactions does she have with people? What questions are people asking her?
Basically, if people go to her to tell them what has happened or what is happening with their life, not necessarily wanting some miraculous answer, but to offload something without being judged. So you can say what you want, and to some other people, what you're saying may be rubbish, but to yourself, when you're saying it, it's very, very important. And she will listen, and she'll give you the judgment of basically what you've said yourself. You know, why did you say this? What was the purpose? You know, what are you feeling? All these kind of things. And eventually you figure out yourself what it is, which is the best thing you can do, because you know yourself more than anybody else. Nobody else knows you. You are an expert on yourself. Nobody else, not even your parents. You are an expert on yourself. And Aunty Bronwyn allows that inner you to come forward and say, oh, yes, you're right, actually. This is what I'm doing. I'm going like in the hamster's wheel, round and round and round. It is me, but in a nice way, in a way which is understandable and soluble.
And she's become very popular, and she's obviously well needed. And she's been around for a while now. How did you come up with the idea, and what was it about your life experience that felt that you could fill this position for people?
On my sort of previous radio broadcast years ago and talking, people came with their ideas and views and whatever on life. And quite often live radio, you've got to be a bit careful of what you say, more today than you did years and years ago. Aunty Bronwyn fills that gap because you can say what you want to this fictitious character, and she can be quite blunt, as I say, not rude, but blunt back to you. And it's up to you whether you take it or not. But I've yet to have anybody who has said no.
Well, that's quite an experience then. Nobody who's disagreed with her words of wisdom. And how long has she been going for?
It's been going about 9 years now.
9 years. But you personally have, well, your career sort of spans over 40 years or nearly 40 years of traveling the globe and understanding different cultures and human experiences and behavior. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how it led you to this point of creating this character and sort of becoming an agony aunt as you are?
it was basically something of a default situation. Because of my work, I was traveling literally around the world. And I mean, literally, I've been around Africa, India, China, the States, South America, whatever, the Middle East, many, many times. And what you find is that everybody in those countries have the same problem as you, except they deal with them differently, because they come from a religious background, which has constraints and restrictions. They come from an ethnic background, which you have to do this, have to do that. You come from an ignorant background, so you do things this way because everybody else has always done them that way. But it's the same problem. And how you deal with those problems is how successful you are in coming to terms with how to rectify them and make yourself better, or leave the worry of those problems behind. And this is basically how I started writing my first books. And Aunty Bronwyn was actually a furtherance from that, to go one stage further, because I understand what people are saying from their different backgrounds. And when you've done that, you can actually give them something more of a more understanding than they had before.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear an example of, I suppose, a problem where it might be specific to a person, their culture or their experience, but perhaps they have that, like you're saying, it's a universal approach or emotions to it. Are you able to give us an example of that, of exactly what you're talking about?
Well, in the book, which is coming out, there are about 150 chapters, and we do talk on a lot of taboo subjects. But there's a lot about personal development of the self. One example, there was a lady who was I was in an Islamic background, and she was confined to her house. She could only leave the house for half an hour to go to the supermarket down the road and come back. And if she was late, she was chastised and everything. And this went on for years and years and years. And one day, she just got up, got her purse, and left. And she went down the high street, and it just happened that there were two ladies having coffee in a coffee shop. And one of them said to the other, you know, I've seen this lady walking up and down, up and down. I hope she's all right. I'll just go and have a word with her. Oh. So she went out and she said, are you all right? She said, no. And she told her the story. And they eventually found her son, because she hadn't got a mobile phone or anything else, but she did know the name of the company. And it was actually her son's company. And the son came and picked her up. And she's actually living a free life now, doing what she wants to do. And there are a lot of stories of people who've written, or phoned in rather, telling us how they broke free, because breaking free is the biggest freedom you can ever do in your life. You know, you are on planet Earth to live your life, not to live somebody else's or to be a puppet or anything else. You are here to live your life, and you should have the freedom to do that.
It's your life, your way. And with your experience, are there any cultures that you feel like have got it more right than others in allowing people to feel like who they are or be able to deal in a healthy way with their emotional problems?
No, I think it's across the board. No matter where you are, if you have a problem in your ethnic culture or society or whatever, to you, that is the biggest thing you need to break free from. And most people just do it. Like this lady, completely out of the unknown. She just had enough. She was a breaking point. And of course, she never looked back. And there are lots and lots of things like that. And I think if you talk to people and you put a scenario to them, it gets them to look out of themselves beyond the horizon and not within the sphere that they have created.
Yeah. And you also talk about people manifest their own negativity. So you see that across the board and across different cultures as well. What exactly do you mean by that? Why is that such an important theme to you? And of course, in a nutshell, I know that each person is specific, but would you have any general across the board advice to someone who might be stuck in a cycle of sort of their own self-created obstacles?
Yes, sometimes self-created obstacles. Well, one thing is, everything you say and you do, it's you. What you say, you hear. So negative people, when they're perpetually saying negative things, are hearing negative things. And so it goes on. And if you're a positive person, regardless of anything, you keep saying positive things because it makes you feel good. Negative people get into a rut quite often. There are some people who are perpetually negative, but most people get into a rut. And if they do so because of circumstances around them, they don't give themselves any self-esteem or value, and that makes them feel lonely. And if you're with a family which is negative, then it brushes off on you. And quite often, a lot of people just need that little push, and it works wonders. To someone say, well, I don't know what you're complaining about. I think it's fantastic. I think you're wonderful. You're marvelous. You've done this and this and this. And they don't actually realize it because they're in such a sphere of negativity. And that little push is quite often what Aunty Bronwyn can give people online.
Nice. So it's like a little positivity boost, really, a bit of motivation.
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's really, really heartwarming. Have you ever given that advice or that boost, as it were, and actually seen somebody's life improve for the better? Could you tell us a little story or an anecdote about something like that?
Quite a few, actually. There are a lot of people. I mean, of course, I don't know them. They just phoned in, and I've done the transcription of what they've said, basically, and put it into the book. But, sometimes people do come back, and you don't know who it is because it's sort of thousands, and you suddenly realize, oh, yes, I remember this. And they say that they've done that, and like this woman, that they've got up and left, just took a purse and went out. They've done the same thing. They've broken free from their family or their relationship because it was destructive or whatever. And they've said, I wish I had done this years ago, but I had nobody to talk to. I daren't tell my friends. I daren't say anything to my family. And I was just literally isolated. I was on a little island of my own. And just talking to you gave me the confidence to say, damn it, I'm going to do this. And they just did it. Quite often full of nerves and apprehension and everything, but they did it. And they look back now and they're laughing at the scenario and saying, wow, this is just amazing. This is a new life for me.
That's great. That is really fantastic. And your book now, I suppose, you've written it with the view of passing on that message to as many people as possible. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes. It's say 150 chapters. There are some taboo topics in there, but you have to read them to understand how they came about, because understanding is part and parcel of the solution. But it's one of those books you can pick up. You can read chapter 1, chapter 47, chapter 122, chapter 9. They are complete in themselves.
And obviously you come from a writing background. That's very much where you started. I presume that's why you then went on to write a book. But there's also interest perhaps in a cartoon or animation series for Aunty Bronwyn, which I think sounds really exciting. It must be a novel idea. What do you think of that? Do you envision that having potential?
Well, I got off to a start by an elderly chap who we were talking about in the publishing field. Mm-hmm. And he said this would make an ideal cartoon and animation thing, a bit like sort of The Simpsons, but in a different vein, in that you could caricature people and the caricatures would speak for themselves. So you didn't have to have too much conversation and you could actually follow it visually. Unfortunately, the chap died. And so did but I've had a number of other people who've been interested because they see a potential in putting that, because it does cross boundaries, all ages, all shapes, sizes, colours, creeds, whatever. So I'm really looking forward to actually getting this off the ground.
It sounds really, really cool. But obviously you have got the book off the ground. It is out there now. Who do you expect will be interested in getting their hands on it? Who's it for?
I think it's for three types of people. The person who's travelling, because you can read a quick chapter as and when you have time to do so. Somebody who is interested in the human persona and what people do and why and everything else. And also those who want upliftment, because every literature chapter is uplifting from some point of view. It's somebody having a problem and they've got out of it. Whatever it is, they've got out of it. It may not touch you, but you can understand, think, wow, they've done an amazing job. It's just so sort of inspirational. And it was inspirational for me to write it as well.
Oh, what a rewarding experience then. Goes both ways. Thank you so much. Look, it's been absolutely heartwarming speaking to you. I've been speaking here now with author John Rushton. The book is called The Anthology of Aunty Bronwyn, just in time for Christmas. I think it sounds like a perfect one for the stockings. You can find it on the Talk Radio Europe bookshop, or I'm sure just pop it into Google. And on that note, John, I'm going to say goodbye now, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Anna. It's been a pleasure.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.